Healing Half with Mickey Spear. I'm your host, Mickey Spear, and today we get to spend a very quick half an hour out of our very busy week to pause and learn how can we help address our own wounds better and learn about how to help others with theirs. Not a single person out there doesn't wish they knew how to be a better friend and more informed when people in our lives are going through hard times. So tonight we're going to be talking all about what happens when grief resurfaces. For so many of you guys out there, you already know this. Grief isn't linear, it goes a billion different directions. So we've got the wonderful, the one and only Jenny Landon back on. And I will make sure that's the correct name when she comes back on. I'm just catching myself now with that. But Jenny's back, and she is the founder of Growing Out of Darkness. And she's been on the show before. We've been so fortunate to have her. And tonight she's going to talk all about how grief has resurfaced in her life, what that looks like, what we can be aware of when in our own lives and as well as other people. And when we see somebody or ourselves going through a new chapter where this unexpected thing is rearing its head, how do we help? What do we do? So we're going to talk to Jenny in just a second. But if you are listening, whether live or as a replay, please let Jenny and I know in the comments section. We would love to know that you are here. So whether it's up below or to the side, say, hey, call it in from wherever. And if you have any questions or comments throughout the show, we love to hear them as well. And we especially love it when you tag a friend in the comments saying, hey, we think you might like what this person is talking about. Our mission, both Jenny and I, want to see the world healed when it comes to grief and so many other things. So invite your friends. We are so grateful for you for doing that. And before I jump on, just a couple quick announcements. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mickey Spear. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 13 years old, and I spent the better part of a decade not grieving and pretending I was fine, keeping people at arm's length away and really buying into that lie that I was strong enough and I didn't need help. Of course, that didn't work out super great, and everything came crumbling down again, kind of at decade mark after my mom died, and I finally started to go to counseling. I finally started to see the beauty and the value in that. And so now I wanted to create a show as well as music and workbooks and a bunch of other fun things to help other people lean into their hard emotions. Because if you're anything like me, busy is natural. It's a lot easier to be busy and just not think about it than it is to actually do the hard work. But I'm here to tell you, and Jenny's here to tell you, and so many other people are on my show to tell you that it's worth leaning into those hard emotions because it's so much more beautiful on the other side. So before we bring Jenny on, a couple quick announcements for you guys. The first and foremost, the Wings for Widows annual benefit. It's coming up. It's virtual. It's free. You should totally check it out. I have the pleasure of being able to sing Light a Candle for Me during the candle lighting ceremony of that, which I'm so honored. I'm so excited. So make sure you do that. And again, this is a fundraiser for them, but you don't have to spend money to go, which is super great. If you want, they have a house party box for $30 that they'll ship to you. I'd encourage you to do that because it's going to have everything you need for the program. And again, that'll give you an opportunity to connect with them and donate if you would like. And again, that will be in my summary email. So if you do have questions, just message me or make sure you head to mickeyspear.com, get on that weekly resource email list, and I'll make sure this is sent to you. This would be great for anybody who is grieving, not just widows. If you have a friend who's a widow, of course, send it to them. But anybody who's ever lost anyone can always pause and appreciate some just dedicated grieving time. So I'll see you there. And last but certainly not least, my new song, Felt the Sun, came out on Friday the 24th. I hope you have had a chance to listen to it. If you haven't, be sure to check it out. It's a fun song. It's 100% different than anything I've put out so far. And you might be saying, well, Mickey, why, as like a grief person, are you putting out pop music? You know, this is like very much a beach, let me run away from my job kind of a song. And the biggest thing that I just want to tell you is that people, all of us, are so multifaceted that it's beautiful. And grief doesn't happen in a box. And I think that's kind of the message that I want to get across with this thought. It's like, yes, I like to talk about grief, but you can be grieving and enjoy going to the beach at the same time. Grief doesn't overtake you so that way you are completely personless in every other aspect. So that's the same thing with my music. Yes, I love to talk about grief, but I also like to have fun and I like to help others and I like to go to the beach. And I'm not tan, but I like to pretend I'm tan and feel the sun on my skin. So you should totally check it out. And if you like it, share it with a friend, be a pal, add it to a playlist on Spotify. That's what they really like for the algorithm. And just keep your eyes peeled for all things music wise coming out. I can't wait to share more and more with you as more songs are coming out this fall. All right. So let's jump on in now to having the one, the only Jenny from Growing Out of Darkness join us. And again, Jenny, we are so grateful to have you on the show. Again, you are such a blessing to us. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Mickey, thank you so much for having me. I always love coming on and chatting with you. It is an honor. And we do have fun. We do have fun. I always say, talking about mental health, talking about heavy topics, it doesn't have to be depressing.
Right. It doesn't have to be depressing. And I feel like that's the biggest misconception is people just assume, oh, they're depressed or they've got anxiety or they're grieving. Like that just must be like this cloud that they can't get out of. And sometimes it is, but it's part of, I'll let you actually talk all about that. That's yours. I don't need to do it. So Jenny, tonight's topic is when grief resurfaces. And as both, I lost my mom. I'll let you tell your story about your dad. I would love to hear how grief has resurfaced in your life. And of course, with your organization and all your wisdom, what you would like to share with others about that. So I guess my first question to you is, do you mind just going back to the beginning and kind of sharing how you kind of got into this world?
Yeah, absolutely. So this really, for me, this journey of trying to understand healing came from losing my dad. And I was 20 years old, living in San Francisco, getting my degree in psychology when I lost my dad to suicide. And for me, this wasn't simply losing my dad, right? This was losing the person who truly meant the most to me. He was my safe space growing up. He was the person that everything I ever did was to make him proud. So while I can talk about him with excitement and joy and absolute love, it doesn't mean that pain that I felt it isn't sometimes still there, right? And the pain that I felt when he died was truly life altering, to the point that I quit my job. I truly did not think I could move forward. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get myself off the floor some days. So, so now 22 years later, I have this nonprofit that's focused on healing after losing a loved one to suicide. And really it's about healing. When it originally started, it was intentional to be for those who had been impacted by suicide, because I've lived all over this country. I've lived internationally. I don't think there's anything more isolating than losing a loved one to suicide or going through your own mental health struggle. So yes, when I started the nonprofit because I wanted to be able to get my book out to as many people who needed it as possible. And I wanted them to know that if they had lost someone to suicide, they were not alone, and that they also didn't need to pay to feel supported. So that was really important to me.
Oh my gosh, an angel to us all. Seriously, Jenny, you are just wonderful. We are so grateful for you and all the impact that you are making, like you said, across the world with your Growing Out of Darkness and all your speeches. And we're just so lucky to have you on the show with us for this little short time today.
Thanks.
So sorry to hear about your dad. Like you mentioned, it's been 22 years and it still affects you. And I think that statement within itself is something people don't understand. They think, oh, that was 22 years ago. Like, I don't know, like, I'm sure she's moved on. And I put that in quotation marks. I'm sure she's moved on. But if I'm correct, there has been something kind of recently that has surfaced your grief in
Mm.
addition to just the normal grief that does continue to happen. Do you mind
Mhm.
telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I will say too, I go to a lot of events where the events start out that they're focused on loss, and they're intended to provide support to those who have lost someone. And it always breaks my heart when the event starts out by saying, "Well, we all know that this is a loss you can never get over." Right? And for me, that is very disheartening because you're essentially telling these people that they're never going to heal. And
Mm.
I would argue healing is possible. And while I am sad that I lost my dad at 20 years old, because of the journey I went on to truly heal, right? Not just mask the pain, not just kind of forget that it happened, or forget the loss that I experienced, but like actually to truly own it, and recognize everything that I went through, and then to go beyond that and recognize the blessings that I received because of his death. Recognizing that his death truly saved my life when I became suicidal, and the things that I learned from losing him that not only have saved my life, but now have saved my daughter's life, have saved countless of other people that I've worked with. And so being able to have that gratitude. Am I glad he passed away? No. But I can still see the blessings that came from that experience and how they have shaped who I am today. So for me, yeah, I would say I have moments where something will happen and I'm like, oh man, I really wish my dad was here to see that. Or I think one of the biggest things, because I'll be honest with you, writing my book, which I didn't set out to write a book, but the process of writing the book um, really brought me so much closer to my dad. And in a lot of ways, I would say I'm closer to him today than I've ever been in my life, even when he was alive. And that he is always, always with me. Um, and so I have had that belief for years now. I started writing my book in 2014. And to be honest with you, I was scared to finish it. I didn't want to finish it because I was scared if I did, that connection would be gone, right? And I was wrong, right? He has stayed right there with me. It's me just reaching out to him and letting him know when I need him, and he's there. And so for me, in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say I would have like the typical grieving that I had in the first, 5-10 years after I lost him, with like the really extreme ups and downs and just these intense moments of longing to be close to him, and struggling with the fact that he was gone until 2020. And the reason for that, and I wasn't expecting it, but my husband and I agreed to get a divorce. And while we agreed to that for all the right reasons, right? We were not fighting, we didn't hate each other. We just simply recognized that we were not in alignment, and that this amazing life that we were living wasn't right for both of us. And so we agreed to a divorce, very amicable divorce, but I was not prepared for how much pain it was going to cause me in truly wishing that my dad could just hold me.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
And I don't know why, sorry, I don't know why, but like almost every romantic comedy I would turn on to try to, or even just comedies, I would try to turn on to like take me to a different headspace, would involve dads.
yep.
And and I'm just like, oh, So yeah, it
Oh,
was hard. It was
yeah.
really hard.
I am so sorry. And I can't wait to kind of pick into that and dive in a little deeper. And on that note, I feel the same way. I feel like the dead mom trope is like everywhere. Like every Disney princess has either lost a mom and a dad or a mom. It's just like,
Mhm.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like I
Kind of
get
messed
it.
up.
It's a little messed up, especially since they make like no nods to it like throughout the rest of the. We'll rant about
Yeah.
that another time. It's almost like clickbait, no, whatever. Anyways, let's dive in a little bit deeper because two things are coming to
Mhm.
my mind. The one is we'll maybe start here. What are some of the losses of divorce that you think might have triggered kind of that loss of your dad?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm misconnecting.
You know what was really interesting, was my dad passed away right before my 21st birthday. And we agreed to a divorce right after our 21st anniversary.
Oh.
And yeah, and it was this, like, I remember right after we agreed to the divorce, like, I was sitting outside, and just kind of playing everything through my head. And all of a sudden that hit me. It hit me. And then it was this, like, what is this 21-year connection? And, and that these men who I love, that I'm losing them,
Mm.
and so that rattled me, and it brought up that, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was just suddenly like I was reliving the loss of my dad.
Mm.
I wasn't expecting it, right? Because I was in such a healthy place, and I truly feel so close to my dad that I was not expecting to suddenly miss him in that way again, and just cry. I mean, like, I'm not kidding, like, on the floor crying, over losing my marriage, losing, this future that I thought I was going to have, losing the life that I was currently living, navigating what that was going to mean for my children. And then on top of it, just all I wanted was to go back home to my childhood home and have him tell me everything was okay, right? And just hold me, and I fit so perfectly, like, in his arms. And that, yeah, I really, really struggled with not being able to have that physical connection to him.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so sorry. Like you said, for all those losses that divorce comes up, and then not being able to have your dad, who was such a huge part of your life, to be there to support you through that. So I guess maybe the next kind of logical question is, how does that story continue? Like, what did that look like? I know you said you've craved him physically,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so I guess for me, what I also realized was the pain that I felt when my dad died, as intense and extreme as it was, and I truly believed that nothing else in my life would ever be that painful until getting a divorce. And I will say that the pain that I felt in 2020 and 2021 was more intense than anything I felt when I lost my dad. Right.
Mm.
And so, and because it was, for me, recognizing that my dad died due to an illness, right? Which is so important. We need everyone to really understand that, this idea that suicide is a choice,
Yeah.
that is a misnomer, right? And it actually really does hinder so many people from being able to go through the grieving process and truly remember their loved one for who they were. So my dad died because he was sick. If he had been healthy, he would have never, ever been able to make that choice. But when someone is suicidal, when they've reached that point, their ability to make choices has been taken away from them. So for me, this was like, he died from an illness, and now I was experiencing a death that was by choice. It was
Mm.
completely by choice. And the way that, again, even though we agreed to do it from a place of peace and a place of, you know what, we want what's best for each other, I wasn't expecting to go into this really dark place of questioning my worth, questioning my value, feeling like the good in me wasn't good enough to offset the bad in me. Because I had moments of fear. I mean, I've been with my husband since I was 18 years old. I had
Wow.
never paid the bills before. I had never had a job that actually paid me money. Everything I've ever done was volunteer. It was all passion projects. I mean, I've always worked to some degree. It's just I got to do what I wanted because I wanted to do it, and I got to be a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. So, um, so entering into this new life was terrifying on so many levels. So there were multiple times where I actually went to him and said, you know what, let's rethink this. Let's maybe
Really?
we should. Yeah, I did. I would say to him, like, let's reconsider this because my friend, she just introduced me to the dating world that I don't ever want to experience again. Like she paid for me to get on this dating app, and oh, for the love of all that is good. Like, I don't know how anyone can navigate those and stay healthy. Like, I was on it for less than a week and I was like, this is insanity. And if this is what's out there, like, honestly, if these are my choices, I'd rather stay with who I'm with. And
Mm.
I don't think he really liked the way I presented it, though. And so I would ask him to reconsider, and he said no.
Yeah.
And so then it would make me and here's the thing that was really interesting is every time I'd ask him to reconsider, there was this little voice inside of me that was begging me not to,
Mm.
that knew that this was the right way to go, but I was scared, you know? And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful that he really held his own and was like, nope, nope, this isn't right. This isn't good. We're staying
Yeah.
separated. But in doing that, he rejected me multiple times, right? And so here I am, like, have basically dedicated the majority of my life to him, to us, to our family, and he's telling me no. And so it caused me to really question my place in the world, question who I am and what I have to offer, and it made me doubt myself terribly. And I think that is where there were these moments where I just wanted my dad to tell me, like, you have this and you're good, and I'm right here beside you. And I think what got me through it was having these moments where I would just talk to him, and
Mm.
there were times I yelled at him and said, I know you're here, but I really want you here. you know and but then I would get quiet and I would feel him. And if anyone were to walk in the room, I guarantee you that they would have seen me being held by him. Right? I was full lean in, just the way I did when I was a kid. Right? Like, I would stand next to my dad, and honestly, I fit so perfectly right underneath his armpit. Like, my shoulder would just fit right there, and my head on his shoulder, and his arm around my waist, and my arm around his. And I think if anyone had walked in, that's what they would have seen. They would have seen it. And so I had to allow myself to let go of my anger and my fear so that I could feel him again.
Mm.
Well,
Yeah, well, I'm over here sobbing. So
yeah.
that was beautiful. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, of course,
Yeah.
all of that. But that is so beautifully said. So, on that note, do you think that would kind of be your main recommendation for somebody who's got this grief, kind of like you said, like out of left field in a way, resurfaced for somebody from a long time ago? Would it be to just be quiet and kind of talk with them and leave space for
Yeah.
it?
Yes, and that I'll be honest, I used multiple different practices to help me get quiet, right? Because I think being able to quiet our brains especially when we're hurting, is one of the hardest things. And because we're spinning, especially. Okay, I don't want to mean to make this a man-woman thing, but women especially, because our brains can go in 100 different directions, right? I mean, there's science that shows how women can literally be thinking about 10 different things at once. And I think Mark Gungor puts it best when he talks about the women's brain being able to open multiple boxes at once and just be like picking things out of every box, whereas the men, it's one box at a time. They pull it out,
Yeah.
they take out what they need, they close it, they put it away. Right?
Yeah.
Or men have the ability, men, unlike women, according to Mark Gungor, they have a nothing box. So
Oh.
when you say to them, like, hey, what are you thinking about? And they say nothing, like, that's actually true. They have a freaking nothing box. I'm like, what? I want a nothing box.
Right, sign me up.
Right. So, but women, we're wired different. The way our brains actually operate is different. So, learning how to quiet our brain and learning how to let go of the pain. And so, I am actually a certified a healer, and I'm trained in emotion code and releasing trapped emotions. So I would use a combination of emotion code to acknowledge what it was that, like, trapped emotions that I might be holding on to that were deep within inside me, and releasing them. I also used EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique. It's tapping. And then there was also a process of called Letting Go by David Hawkins. If anyone is having insomnia, get this book on Audible and keep it at regular speed. And I guarantee you, you will be asleep like instantly. Like, this narrator is something else. But so yeah, if you're having trouble sleeping, and then you're actually absorbing it, I feel like through osmosis, right? Because you're getting all the information while you sleep. But if you don't want to fall asleep, then maybe speed it up a little bit so that it moves quicker. But fantastic, fantastic book. And so anyway, I would just, depending on the day, depending on what was going on, I would just go with my instincts, right? So maybe there was a time where I was really intensely overwhelmed by certain pain, and it was like, all right, I'm going to tap it out, right? And it's and the thing about all three of these is you're acknowledging what you're feeling. You are putting a word to the pain that you're feeling, and then letting your body know it's okay to release it, right? That you don't have to hold on to it. And with each one of them, a lot of times I would cry harder as I released, because it actually it's unpacking all of these emotions that have been bottled up and held in tight, where we're trying to protect ourselves, we're trying to protect others. And so sometimes when we first release, it gets bigger, it gets messier. Think about, like, when you're cleaning out your closet, right? Like, it kind of explodes, and then you're able to, like, sort everything out and then put all the pieces back together the way you want in an organized way. So to me, that's a lot like grief and healing is the same way. So yeah, I just would really focus on acknowledging what I was feeling. I never shut it out. I never shut it down, and if I was in a space where there were other people, I would excuse myself. I would go to a space where I could just cry. I took a lot of showers, a lot of crying in the shower. And I would talk to my dad a lot. I would talk to God, and say, what am I supposed to be learning from this? How am I supposed to be growing? Please raise my awareness to whatever it is that I'm supposed to be recognizing as being a vital piece of my development. And so all of those things really helped me a tremendous amount. I also started working with a coach, and she's based in London. And I'm going to tell you that she came in my life exactly when I needed her to. And this is what I'll say, during COVID, everybody was talking about how important connection was. And we need to connect, we need to be around people and find ways to be around them. And what I realized was how important the right connections are, right? And sometimes we have to let go of the relationships that are holding us back, even if they're not necessarily obviously unhealthy. If they are preventing us from being our best selves, we're never going to achieve our purpose. We're never going to fully live our passion. And so, as much as I was devastated that I really was getting divorced, and I was terrified, when I started to own it, when I started to really accept where I was, and one of the ways I did that was answering a question that came, and I honestly believe my dad brought me this question, because it was the last time I asked my ex-husband to reconsider, and it was right after Valentine's Day, and I asked him to reconsider, and he said no. but he said it in a kind of mean way that like crushed my soul. And I laid there on the floor crying. And then I started thinking about these two questions that I had been asking myself for a long time. In fact, the first question is really what led to us getting a divorce. And that was knowing we don't have control over the people, place, or things. What do I want to experience in this life? Right? So it's not about the house or the cars or the fancy vacations. It's not about having Matthew McConaughey as your husband, right? Like it's not that. It's truly letting go of all that, right? That's where actually vision boards can get us in trouble because we are focused on materialistic, like things of this world. What I'm asking people to do is go deeper, right? What do you truly want to experience in order to live your best life? And for me, it was gratitude, soulful connections, facing adversity with dignity and grace, knowing that I've contributed to something bigger than myself, right? And the only time I ever wrote a name, because I would answer this question daily, and the only names that ever showed up on that piece of paper was being the best mom possible to Kaylee and Grace, right? Those were the only names. Everything else was a clean slate. It's like, I don't have control. But I started to realize he didn't want the same things. And so that's what led to us getting a divorce. And then Hema, this woman I was working with in London, and for anyone who wants her information, please message me. I will give it. She's brilliant. I love her to pieces. Is that she said to me when she said, when you do start dating, which we had agreed that I wouldn't for 6 months, I would not have any contact with men other than brothers or if they were gay for 6 months. And she said, but when you do, it's important that you know what your values are, because that's going to help you identify who is really right for you and who isn't. And so she challenged me to really consider, like, what are my values? And think about that question. We all talk about values. Or actually, no, probably we don't. Like, that's what's sad is when we're at church, we talk about values, we talk about morals, things like that. But this is actually not just morals. Like, this is truly, what do you value, right? So laughter, harmony, balance, transparency, integrity, right? And I actually Googled it. I actually Googled like top values and even company values. Like, I just kind of went values crazy and I wrote them all out. But here was where it really made a difference. Not just when I free wrote or when I researched and wrote, it was when I would go back and read the list. I would read it, and when certain ones really like resonated, they made me feel something, I would circle them. And that's when I started realizing what my core values were, right? And what I realized is I have 16 core values. But on the day that I asked him to reconsider, like I swear to you, my dad was having a conversation with me about these two questions that I've been asking myself. And then he said, what are the essential requirements for you to live a life you love? And I got up and I went and I wrote down, this question at the top of a piece of paper. And I do highly recommend pen to paper to really process. And so I wrote out, like, here are the essential requirements I have to live my best life. And then I wrote out, what are the essential requirements for my partner to be in my life? And I wrote that out. And then I looked at it and I started laughing. Because I went, I've got 8 things on this list. These are like my true essential requirements. My ex-husband only possesses one of those 8. So this was where I realized this wasn't about me not being good enough for him. It's not about him not being good enough for me. It truly was that we were not in alignment. And that aha moment made me go, oh my gosh, I'm amazing. I'm amazing.
You are.
And you know what? I now know what it is I'm looking for to live my best life. And I know who I'm looking for to be my partner. And I'm not willing to settle. And that was a game changer for me, an absolute game changer.
Oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. And I wish we could talk about this all day, but we're going to wrap it up,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But Jenny, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have to re-listen to this like 12 times just to like take all the nuggets that you had really quickly. How can people reach you?
Email me at jenny@growingoutofdarkness.org.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I include that in the summary email. So thank you again so much for being
Absolutely.
here.
Love it. Love you.
You too. Oh my gosh. Isn't she amazing, you guys? In the comment section, make sure you give a huge thank you to Jenny for those wisdom nuggets. Oh my gosh. I'm over here eating it up like popcorn. But you guys, grief is going to resurface. Odds are it's going to come up when you least want it and when you least expect it. But like Jenny said, there is room for you to pause and to process and to name it and claim it and really dive in. So that's just my hope is as that comes up for you, whether it be a season change. I know sometimes for me, one way my grief has resurfaced with my grandma this year is we would always go visit her one last time in like the September fall season, right before she'd head out to Arizona for the winter. And I just feel like my body is saying, go to Winona, like go to Winona. Like that's you're supposed to go see grandma right now, right? Like I just did that every single year. And all of a sudden I just sobbed the other day because I was like, I can't go back. Like it's gone. Like it's entirely gone. And so whether it be a season change or a holiday, or maybe you have a new chapter and you're kind of realizing for the first time they're not coming with you into that chapter, or another loss. Again, we always say loss is cumulative, kind of resurfaces some past ones. There's a lot of things that can make grief resurface. And I am just so grateful to have Jenny on to share both her wisdoms with going through a tough thing like divorce, as well as how to handle resurfaced grief. So, Jenny, thank you. I will see you guys next Tuesday. Please don't forget my new song, Felt the Sun, is out. I'd appreciate if you gave it a love or a share, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.